Welcome to the Heat of Command podcast, mastering the art of fire service leadership.
Where we, your hosts, aim to teach you how to use introspection and self-reflection to be your most authentic, genuine self, leader, and human being.
And now, here are your hosts. This is Kyle Matusik.
And Kerry Henderson. Thanks for joining.
Welcome back to another episode of the Heat of Command podcast. Today, we got some good tidbits that we're going to share with you today. You know, as we progress in our careers and you move on through your career and new people are coming into this industry, there's a lot of change going on, a lot of change. And as we wrapped up our last episode where we interviewed Chief Carter from the Virginia Beach Fire Department, you know, we talked a lot about training and advancements and things that are going on. And now it's kind of looking at how we lead that, because it's a lot different than the industry that I started in and that you started in, Kerry. We're in a much different place. You know, one of my good friends, Chris, I think we had him on the show a little while ago. He brought up this idea that, 20 years ago when fire departments were competing for candidates, we were just competing with other fire departments. Today, we're competing with the corporate world. And my opinion is the corporate world is winning. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. And they're staying up with the times and they're being progressive and they're drawing people into their industries, while all over the country, the fire service and certain other industry level jobs are hurting. And sometimes it's because we're stuck in our old ways and we got to advance out of it. And the real question is, how do we do that? And how do we do that with a sense of purpose, professionalism, and how do we continue to grow? And a lot has changed in our industry and is, kind of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, there's a lot we can cover today, and a lot comes to mind when we talk about leading in uncertain times and the changing workforce and the changing just everything. Everything in our world is changing at such a rapid pace. Sometimes it feels hard to keep up. And just hiring alone and thinking about the kinds of people and the way we hire people and what that has to look like. If you're a chief or an executive level officer in the fire service, you have to be thinking about what your fire service is going to be looking like, not just 10 years from now, but 20, 30 years from now when you're long gone. And how do you build a successful organization and a culture that's going to sustain itself? But you have to look at what kinds of people and what kinds of talent and what kinds of diversity and all those things that when I was hired, it was, can you pull hose off a truck, and, can you be a decent medic? And, there was thought into, are you a good person? Right. I think our organization has always had that somewhere in our culture. It's definitely forefront right now. Are you a good person and doing the right thing and working hard and that kind of thing? But now it's really got to be what you're looking for, but not just that. It's not just, are you looking for people who can do the job of firefighter or paramedic or whatever? Now we have to also be looking for people that in 15, 20 years can run a large scale organization. To run a fire department, is even small fire departments, it's still the same stuff you're faced with. You've got to have this whole other skill set that we aren't always thinking about when we're hiring some 18-year-old. And that has to come into play too, because if you want to hire from within, which I think we all should be doing, we should, it's what the military does. The military isn't hiring some 5-star general from Google. They are building the people and developing their people from within their culture and organization, which I think the fire service, we should be doing that in our own departments. We shouldn't be trying to steal chiefs from other places. This is Kerry's soapbox right here. I better rein it back in. But I just really feel like you should be thinking about that when you're hiring these folks. And Kerry 20 years ago, sitting on an interview panel, was like, why are these people in these interviews talking about, one day I want to be a fire chief? Well, now when I interview people and they're already thinking about, they may not even understand what that job will look like in the future, but they know that they want to advance and they know that they want to develop. Maybe that's stuff we're already thinking about, or not necessarily that, but looking at the traits that people bring to the table. that may set them up for that kind of route, and also making sure we're developing that all through their career. Because for me, I always knew, I wanted to move up through the ranks. I wasn't sure exactly what that would look like for me, but I got promoted to captain. I loved that job. Company officer on an engine was fantastic, but it's still that mindset of go to emergency, fix emergency, move on to next emergency, right? And our day, and then you go home and you're like, oh, okay, that day is done. Come back, do it all over, and it looks different every day. But it's still a mindset of it's very quick decision making to get the task done. You may have some projects or committees, work groups you're assigned to, but when I got promoted to battalion chief and was in the office setting, it was tough for me because I wanted to come in and get a project and be done with it in a day and turn it in and be like, oh, boo, I did it. I solved this crisis. But so much at that level takes incredible amount of thought and work and foresight and thinking about things for the future that cannot be solved in one meeting or in one sit down brainstorming session. And so, yeah, Kerry just went on a total tangent on this one, but that's just where my brain goes with this topic. And I love that we're talking about this today.
Yeah, everything's changed, and I can relate a lot. For our listeners out there, I just kind of got into a part-time position working in emergency preparedness, and yeah, it's a much different atmosphere and environment, right? You go into an office and it's long-term outlooks, it's long-term strategy. How are we going to fix vulnerabilities? Let's take time, let's have discussions, let's collaborate, and then we'll come to a solution. And that's a long time frame, right? It's not quick. I'm ready to give me an assignment, I'll get it done that day. Those days are over in that environment. And as we look at building our organizations, before we got on the air, you said it's like running a business, and how are we going to translate that mentality into the job of firefighters? Because that in and of itself is a challenging endeavor to take on. And there's a bunch of quick strategies you talk about, education, things like that, but it comes back to the end goal of the fire service, right? And I think we all agree on that: save lives, property, environmental conservation, all that stuff. And we agree on all that. But the way the job is done nowadays and the way we've advanced in technology, the way we do things, the way fires burn, the way we hire and promote and everything has changed. The people that are coming into our industry, everything has changed. So has to be this mindset of being able to be adaptable. I think you said a fancy word before we got on the air, but I'm not going to try and say that one.
Adaptability.
There you go.
It sounded harder before when I was.
It did. That sounded very good. So it's creating that type of a culture, when people are coming in, not just this is the way we do it, this one way, and, pull hose, put water on fire, done, move on. But then building that mentality and that level of professionalism and education that's going to allow them to progress to the next level and the next level, to have this, larger view of what is going on and how to implement these new strategies. And I think that's one of the big areas where, as an industry-wide, that we lack is that kind of concept and that business mentality, and bringing those strategies into younger people and building them up, more of a corporate model, if you would, I guess. That's just a word I threw out there. It could be the wrong way I'm saying it, but just utilizing a different strategy. And as we develop change and we go through all these changes and we adapt, right, we're going to have failures, and that's okay. So we just learn from those failures and we move on, not just stay and give up and just go back to the way things always have been. But that's, like, I think one of the biggest things. We're an industry that has been, our characteristics are what they are, and so many just live by that. This is who we are. We're firefighters. This is what we do, period. And in 2024, that means so much more than it did 20 years ago, and how we need to educate and develop our people has drastically changed with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's got to be this balance, because I hear both, like, we got to run this like a business. And then I hear people say, no, a fire department is not a business. And both are right.
Mm-hmm,
I think both are right, because we are and I've read this somewhere and I don't remember where it was, that we really are our own thing. We can't run it like a business. We can't run it like the old school fire service. You know, it's this got to be this combination, because the business component behind it of the forecasting and the long range planning and the project management, we really do need. We need that expertise, but we can't treat it like a business that is, making the dollars,
Right.
you know, at all possible costs, and the bottom line is the dollar. So there's this bigger human element in it too, but there has to be a business model behind all of it, so that you don't implode and you're not making short-term rash decisions that don't set yourself up for success in the long run. So it does have to be this balance, that we have to have it we have to have people that have that kind of mindset, or are trained and developed in that kind of thinking, because I wasn't. That was not my, and here I come in, and at one point I'm the health and safety chief. I have no workers comp background. Like, I
Right.
have no, like, the expectation that I was that, I'm reviewing all these injuries and accidents, and that I can put these safety mechanisms in place, like make recommendations to prevent injuries and accidents. I'm like, I, like, that's not, people go to school for that for years and years,
Right.
and work up through the ranks. And I was like, so I had to learn that on the fly. And I think so much of what we do in the fire service is exactly that way. Is, okay, you got promoted because you were the best at being a captain, or you were the best at your promotional process. Now go do this whole different job, but only do it for 2 or 3 years, because then we're going to rotate you out and somebody else has to learn it from ground up too.
Right.
Like, and it's this cycle of people learning this job over and over and over. So now there's a new health and safety chief, and I help him as much as I can, but he's never done it before.
Right.
And it's just a weird, we just do things so fire service. It's just, we just do things our own way, and sometimes it's not always, I don't know.
It's not very efficient, right? It
Oh,
is. It's kind of your consistently have the same problem that you're trying to fix every
yeah,
cycle of new person coming in. And it's
yeah,
like, oh, okay, so where's the professional development? How do we pass this stuff on?
yeah, yeah,
So you look at training at one token of the equation when we're talking about, how do we change? How do we, manage change within our industry to meet the needs of the people coming in? And, obviously number one's training. But then what kind of program is in place within your organization to ensure that we are passing the information on? This is what we've done, and continuing to progress every section, whether it's training, whether it's safety, whether it's operations, logistics, fire prevention, regardless, that we're not reinventing the wheel every time, and that we're also progressing it. Not it's the same way we've always done it as well. So it's like those
yeah,
two things. And I think you hit it, right? Like, we just do things the way the fire service does them. And it's like, it's almost like it's this lost identity in 2024. Like, what is the fire service? Because it's not the old ways. But like you said, we can't go completely corporate. Like, we can't show up to a fire and bring out a board, board chairs and a desk and have a meeting to figure out, well, how we're going to put this out, right? If we got to go to work. So it's kind of that in between, and our identity in that, and how do we, you know, get ourselves out of that. But some of the there's a lot of issues that go along with that, or in every individual organization, where's your leadership think the organization is, and even believes in what we are talking about. And then the big conflict for us, and probably a lot of union states out there, is that relationship, because we get marching orders from a village board. So it is what it is. It's almost like everybody's got to come to the table and have this discussion on how we build this business and how we build this industry, and get on the same page. So it's not that us versus them. It's not this, adversarial relationship. It's this kind of cohesive entity that is building up the industry, and getting the work done that needs to be done. And it's a lot different today than it was years ago.
yeah. And I've shifted some of my thoughts lately in the admin world is we have to teach people to be administrative thinkers and administrative decision makers, because we were, like what I talked about before, fire service decision makers, is very quick decision, which serves us very, very well. But sometimes on the admin side, you have to be an administrative decision maker. And so I've hosted work groups through most of my time as a battalion chief, but I did it with the mindset of, all right, we have this committee or this work group so that people can have an opinion and their voice can be heard and they're part of that. And that's true. That is very true, because people do need to be included in these decisions and you need to hear, all the sides to things. But what I realized within the last, I would say 6 to 8 months, is the bigger benefit is it gets people in the room for you to demonstrate how to make these long-term decisions. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about is I was tasked with creating an acting battalion chief's process. So folks that want to ride as the battalion chief in charge for the day. We wanted a process to get those people cleared to make sure, they were good to go to ride that car for the day. And so I had this amazing work group, very strong minded. Some of our most alpha captains were all in that room. And, they all have these very strong opinions, which was great. And they all have a ton of experience. And then also, we just ran this work group where we're creating this driver pump operator program. And this is some younger folks, kind of mid-level, experience level, some captains, mostly firefighters, drivers. And so what I found is with the driver group, they are thinking very like idealistic. If I'm creating a program to release driver pump operators, they should have been here for 3 years. They should have done this, this, and this. They should be career ladder level this. They should go through, it should take them at least 6 months to do this task book. And then they have to do that. And it was a lot of, in the perfect fire service world, you wouldn't let somebody drive a truck until they've been here this long. They had to do all this extra training. They need this, this, and this. But in the world we live in, I had to show them and explain to them that we're going to not have any drivers. If that's the case, we don't live in that world. It's not going to happen. But what you're saying is not wrong. What you're saying, and they're like, well, we just have to set the standard. We just have to set the standard. I'm like, I don't disagree that would be the perfect standard to have. But if we do this, it's a trickle effect of now we don't have drivers. You're going to have to get transferred all the time to go drive. We're going to have to hold mandatory overtime because we don't have drivers. Then people want to leave our organization because they're getting shifted around all the time or getting held mandatory. So we have to, these are just the decisions, and we have to go through this whole list of people to see who would we exclude. And so I said, let's pull the roster out. If this is what the standard is you want to set, I want you to go through this list and tell me who you're getting ready to exclude. And they're like, oh, well, no, he'd be fine. Oh, she'd be fine. He'd be fine. I'm like, yeah. So you have to think through what is the actual result of every decision that you're making, because it can't just be, I think it should be this. You have to actually play out. That's what I always say. You have to play this out. What does this actually look like if you don't, think through everything? And that took me so long. But now bringing these people in the room and talking through the repercussions of certain decisions, I think is so helpful for the people. Because I never, I don't think I ever really was privy to some of that stuff before, that hopefully when they come into a position like mine in the future, they already are ahead of the game. Like, okay, I know I need to think this, this, and this. And what is the effect of my decision? Not just my decision should be the best possible thing for the department, but what are the repercussions and ramifications of it?
Yeah, we're really good. We have very logical minds, right? I think firefighters do, and we give very logical answers that make a lot of sense. But here are the cards you're dealt. So, and that changes the ball game. Like, okay, yeah, I'm sure, but here's what you have to work with. So now make your decision. And I think that's a great way to teach, leadership. I think that's a great way for people to start building that kind of, we talk a lot about critical thinking, but there's also critical thinking and decisions that are going to be, very impactful for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So, it's kind of changing that mentality of critical thinking on the
Yeah.
scene versus in an office. And I think there's a lot of value there. And I think, that's probably, if I could sum it up, that's the area. Like, how are we thinking in the boardrooms? How are we thinking in the meetings, in the work groups? Like, what is that thought process? Because we can't use the same thinking mentality that we utilize out on the fireground because it's different. Because
It,
yes, we're analyzing a fire scene, but analyzing in an office is different. We're looking at different things where we have the time. We can pull in different people with different levels of expertise, people with different levels of strengths in certain areas. Like, we have opportunity to really take advantage of time when it comes to these big long-term decisions and building out an organization.
yeah. And I think in the fire service too, and I know this is true for me, I made a lot of decisions when I first came into the office based on assumptions on what I thought would happen or what I thought was actually happening out there, in our department. Like, and what I mean by that is whatever your little bubble is you're exposed to, you're like, okay, the biggest problem right now is this. It's car accidents. Well, let's say it's car accidents, and I got to solve that problem. Well, because where your little district is, that's what you're running all the time. But really, when you look at the data and you actually take the time to pull information that's you have to do that in the admin world. And I'm not talking just I'm talking to anything you're making decisions on, like that driver pump operator thing is a good example of the committee wanted to make it so you had to be career ladder level firefighter level 2 before you could go for that. And they're like, well, then that way they've gotten additional training hours. They've been there 2 years. And that's when I said, okay, but you have to actually pull the roster and we have to pull the numbers. So we have to go into our software and look, and not everybody can see that information, and make a list of everybody that wants to come through this next program. Who are you getting ready to eliminate? And so of the like 14 people that were ready to start working as a pump operator, 11 of them weren't career ladder level 2s. And if we would have gone off of an assumption like, hey, let's make them career ladder level 2s to go through we would have shot ourselves in the foot. So it's doing the extra work instead of going, I feel like it's probably this. I feel like, we're doing a lot of this, but maybe we really aren't. And you got to actually do the work, pull the numbers, do the research. And it's so much more time consuming than we're able to make decisions on a fire ground based on intuition because, I mean, for the most part, fire's pretty predictable.
Right.
Cutting cars is pretty predictable for the
Yeah.
most part. So everything else in our world is not always predictable.
Yeah. Yeah. And in this day and age, when we're looking at much different things, how the fire service has evolved, and you're looking at, disaster preparedness and resiliency and vulnerabilities, like, that's a lot of critical thinking in the office. It's just a lot has changed. So, I know there's a lot of people out there that say we need the old fire service back, and I strongly disagree. And I don't think we're ever going backwards, nor should we. I think we should be advancing and progressing. So as we continue to do that and have these conversations, Kerry, like, what is it? What is your recommendations, our recommendations? Like, how do, we talked about some points, but like, what's some bullet points of what can we do to start? Because I think there's a lot of organizations out there trying, but there's nobody to kind of, who do you look at? Like, what fire department is killing it and doing this, that is commonly known throughout our industry, right? Probably not very many. There might be some, absolutely. And please share if you're listening and let us know. But like, what do we do? How do we do this?
Uh,
How do we become?
a lot of things come to
Yeah.
mind. Absolutely get outside of your own organization.
Yes.
But at the same time, so this is going to sound contradictory, but it's not, I promise. So look outside because if you've only known what your department's doing, you're going to repeat that over and over and over and over. So look and see what other people are doing. You don't necessarily always need to reinvent the wheel, but remember too, and this hit home for me when I finally took it to heart, is you probably have some really darn smart people in your own organization and they don't trust themselves. So this was true for us. We were a very young organization that was led by very young leaders. And I think we thought some other department had it all figured out. And guess what? That's just not the case. And so we were second guessing, and we kept thinking we needed these technical guidelines from somewhere else, or we need this from somewhere else. But really, we knew what worked in our own organization. We needed to get some guidance from outside, but really trust that we had some really freaking smart people that worked with us, and that we could figure it out. We just needed to take the time to do it. You couldn't just make a rash decision. You had to take time to play out all, like for tactical guidelines. When we were making those, like, how does this actually play out? We can't just say we would love to have 3 engines, 2 ladders. This engine does this. This engine does this. This ladder. How does that actually play out in a county that's as spread out geographically as ours is, with automatic aid from 2 other jurisdictions and volunteer agency? It's a lot, and we had to take the time to play it all out. And so trust your smart people and look outside. So it's kind of both. You have to do both. And I also think you have to teach people and show people how to make decisions, how to make that kind of decision. You can't just, and I see the people above me, and I am guilty of this too, get so frustrated with people because people will come in and be like, "Fire chief, why don't you do this?" Or "Chief Henderson, why don't you just do this?" And I'll get irritated, like, "You have no idea, like what, blah 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 blah." And I'm like, it takes all this other stuff, and we can't do this. We tried that before, blah blah blah. Because I know the history of that, and I know this level, and you can't see me, but like I know this level stuff and all the other backstory where they know their station and their shift history, right? And so you can't get mad at people for not knowing the whole story. You have to tell it to them.
Yeah.
Every single time that they ask. And it's so frustrating. I see so many leaders get frustrated with what they don't understand. They don't understand. They just want us to do this. And your fire chief wants to pay everybody a gazillion dollars and give you the best benefits and all the leave and, 20 people on a fire truck. But, and so you have to always be willing to take a breath and explain, well, this is why we can't. This is why this, and this takes place or didn't happen, or we can't get extra people yet, or we can't increase staffing in admin, or we can't increase staffing on the rescue or the ladder, or whatever, because all these other things were happening too. And so you can't be frustrated when people don't know the whole picture, because they don't. They don't yet. So help people learn the process of making decisions and learn, all the other things. That would be some of my suggestions.
Yeah, and that's I it comes down to everything that we talk about, and it comes down to effective leadership to do all that. It
Yeah.
comes down to a leader who is willing to say, "Follow me," not go there and I'm going to stay here, right? And
Yeah.
not about me, but it's about you. And what do I need to do? How do I need to adapt? How do I need to change to promote this type of culture environment in the direction that the fire service is going? And I think we lack that a lot, and it's just stay in the way it's always been done and the way we've always kind of done things, but change it a little bit to look like we're changing. One of the big things I hit on when our essays that got us to meet was just that: get out of the organization. Sometimes I have a lot of problems with the way fire service classes are taught, because, a safety officer class, right? I got, we have incident safety officer, fire department safety, health and wellness safety officer, and that makes you a fire department safety officer. Well, that's 2 weeks of class.
Yeah.
And that, all of a sudden you are the safety expert. And it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
And it's like these responsibilities that are placed on people after a week of a class, or, the promotional process you go through and you do well and you get promoted, and then bam, expectations, right? And it's like, oh, what? And, we put this stuff on people and we have these expectations. And it's like, well, what went along with that? Yeah, they did very well. How have we developed them? So you got to look at that big picture leadership and what the administration within the organization is doing in terms of that, because if they're not doing any of that, then none of what we're talking about is ever going to work. You have to wait until they're gone and the next generation is not so jaded that they want to put the effort in. And sometimes I feel like we're just in that cyclic type of circle to where that's kind of where we're stuck, that people get so jaded and then they get promoted and then this and then that, and things just stay the same. And it becomes a frustrating environment, but that's the stuff that we got to build out of.
And I think for a long time, and this may just totally be a perception, because like I said, like when I was younger in the fire service, I feel like the fire department was kind of coasting.
Yeah.
So there were, if you did your budget cycles, your policies were probably somewhat in place. There wasn't a lot of change in tactics for a while. And then now I feel like if you're a chief level officer, and no, but really for anybody in the fire service, there is so much change in everything, literally everything.
Right.
So when I come to work, I could be working on, the federally mandated electric vehicle training that's come out, or maybe I'm working on suicide prevention, or maybe I'm working on, how do we use AI to benefit the fire service? There's drones, there target solution. There's just so much all the time. Like now we're going to redo 2 in 2 out. Probably OSHA's going to redo 2 in 2 out. It's like just constant stuff where you cannot be stagnant in an admin position. And I'm not saying anyone was before, but there is so much to be done. And I want firefighters to know that your chiefs have a lot on their plates, and we're working really, really hard but we can't make rash, quick decisions on some of that, because it could affect us if so far into the future. And we're trying to look out 20, 25 years from now too.
Yeah,
A lot.
I think
So
you
much change.
identified another issue too, right? You look at all that stuff that is now become a responsibility of the fire service.
Yeah.
And you
Oh,
look at
yeah.
all the accreditation requirements
Yeah.
and all the changes that are coming and all the changes to physicals and medicals
Mhm.
and suicide and mental health and fire prevention, and OSHA's going to change some standards, and yet we still
Community medicine and whole blood and
right.
ultrasounds, and it's just an on and on and
And
on
it's
and on.
on. So where does that, because it's like a constant, and it's like, have we just shot ourselves in the foot by implementing all these things that we have to try and meet, yet we don't have the staffing? We're running so many calls. I can barely get training in. Like, well, how are we supposed to do this? And then you're burning people out. So it's like, I think you hit it. You identified a second issue, which maybe just prevents some of this growth, because we just don't have the time, because we are just so grinding on all these things that have to be done. And especially in those smaller organizations, like, I don't know how you do it. And there's no way you are, right? And that's no fault to you. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. It's just unlikely and unrealistic to meet all these standards all the time. And it is just like, when is enough enough? Like, what
Right.
else is going to be asked of us? And it just becomes extremely challenging. And, for a lot of people, probably frustrating as well, especially for the leaders. And it's like, I don't know how we're going to get this all done. And you keep asking people to do stuff and do more and do more and do more. And it's like, people are starting to say, no, no, I'm good. I'm going to hang out and work my shift, and then I'm going to be off for 2 days. So leave me alone.
Mhm.
And I think you're seeing that with younger generations. Like, hold on, like, I'm not going to, so it's just kind of this, yeah, it's a multitude of issues. One thing I tell a lot of our young guys, and I'm a big believer of it, and I know there's two schools of thought on this, but I think college education is very important for a multitude of reasons. And I'll talk till I'm blue in the face with anybody on why. But when we start looking at critical, regardless of the education you go out and get, all right, yeah, sure, you could go spend some time online and chat GPT your way through college. I'm not debating that. But if you really want to take advantage and grow as a professional, you could take go get a bachelor's in anything, move up to your master's, whatever. But it allows that level of critical thinking, I think, or it has the opportunity to, right? The environment is there to think in a way different than how we think on the fireground. And I think there's a lot of value there. Not only that, it opens up a whole new world for you in terms of administrative responsibilities. It opens up a whole new world in case, you want to retire and move on to a second career. Like, it just affords, I think, a lot of opportunity for growth within the fire service and beyond the fire service. And I think it's one of those things that is, I'm shocked to this day that it's not mandated. I know some municipalities around me do require, I think, an associate's bachelor's to get promoted to company officer. And a lot of people are like, oh, that piece of paper doesn't make you a better firefighter. Sure, it doesn't make you pull a hose better or read smoke better. Like, I'm not debating that, but there's so much more to the job now. And it does make you better in those aspects of administrative responsibilities, and makes you a more well-rounded professional instead of just a one-directional firefighter, which I'm not taking anything away from that. There are people that are going to be that for their careers, that we want for that career, and that are going to be just that. And that's fine. That's totally cool. But for those that want to advance and get on the administrative level like that, education is, in my belief, and again, it's outside of the fire service. So you're being taught by other people that are not in our industry, that you get to bring a lot of knowledge to those folks that are in those class, while they're giving you a lot of knowledge of a way of thinking that you've never thought of. So I think, and it develops research abilities and analyzing abilities and all these other things that come along with what's required nowadays to grow as a professional in our industry. So I think there's a lot of value there. I think, as we look at and talk about, strategies to how to combat this, I think, looking at education and promoting education outside of the fire service within your organization could hold a lot of value, and I think there's a lot there that could benefit organizations.
Yeah, I cannot be the only one that thinks this, but this is going to sound super judgy. But at my level, if I get something from another officer, a chief level officer, and it is not well written, like if you're pitching a class or you send me an email asking me to be a part of something, or like a class announcement, and it's not well written, I automatically assume that your product is junk. Maybe not junk, but I'm already judging like, is this going to be any good? Or what's this person doing? Like this email is whatever. This is going to be a horrible project or whatever. And so turn that around, and you're a chief level officer, or you're aspiring to be a chief level officer, and you need to go in front of your board, whatever your political board is, or your whoever makes your budgeting decision. So we have to submit budget stuff and justifications for all of that, which is all writing. It's not numbers, it's justifications in writing, and you got to submit that stuff. Can you imagine if you've got mediocre writing abilities and you're submitting this stuff to your accounting department, your board of supervisors, your county administrator? They're immediately judging you. Immediately. Like, no, they probably don't really need this because look at this, So that alone for education is important it's important to me. That part of it is very important to me.
Oh yeah, technical writing was a class that I enjoyed thoroughly because my emails went from like 2 paragraphs to a sentence. And not like nowadays. My wife's like, "You're not going to explain yourself." I'm like, "There's no need to. I just have a point to get across. Like that's it. Just write your sentence. Period. Move on." Like there's so much fluff in a lot of emails that you just don't need.
Yeah.
But that's a little soapbox, I guess, but but yeah, totally. Technical writing is huge, and even grant writing, right? I mean, there's a lot of grant opportunities, but if you're not writing valid grants and stuff, but that's the one thing where you look at classes beyond the fire service of helping grow the fire service. And I know this isn't of popular opinion, but it's the reality, whether we like it or not. There's a thing about life and the world we live in, and whether you like it or not, we are where we're at, right? And there's no going backwards. So let's move on from that. And we got to look forward and how to progress out of this, because going back to the way things used to be, like, that's not an option, like gone. So it's moving on and developing new strategies, some of the stuff that we've talked about today. But again, like I said, if it doesn't work, you learn from your failures and continue to progress. It's not just staying stagnant and saying, well, that didn't work, we're going backwards. No, we still got to constantly, progress. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially with the young people coming in. I think they're eager. And I think, when we're seeing this huge shift of people within our industry, and I think it's countrywide, right? I don't think here in Illinois is any different. We're seeing a mass exodus and a mass, I go on calls and I'm like the oldest person, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like when did this happen? And I'm not even that old. it's crazy. But like at that same token, as we're getting all these new people in, now is the time to change it because it's easy. This is the easiest it's going to get. It's not going to get easier than this. But once those minds start getting, put down the way of the way things have always been done, now it's going to start being hard because now you got to reverse those minds. So it's
Yeah.
like getting in there now as they're young and promoting kind of a different type of industry for them in the future so they can succeed.
Yeah, and a couple other things before we wrap up that I want to just touch on briefly as ideas that I've seen work for helping in the in the critical thinking and in the admin's world of things, and it can help really any where. And I applaud. I worked for a couple different assistant chiefs, two different assistant chiefs, and I've bounced back and forth between them depending on my job function. But one of the assistant chiefs that I've worked for, he's a young guy, super, super smart. And he really has taken the time to, I think, learn how to lead each of us that he's responsible for. So, and I think he's done this through formal education or reading books. I'm not exactly sure, but I can really tell that he has put effort into learning, and he's an introvert too. So it's an even bigger deal for, I think, that he has done this work to learn to lead someone like me who's such an extrovert and who is so I'm just such a just I'm all over the place, right? Obviously, but like just the way my mind works is so different. But he has taken, I can tell, a lot of time to learn how I make decisions and how I need to be spoken to and how what makes me tick and what makes me excited and what makes me engaged. And he does those things, and it's and I see it, and I know it's happening. I know he's like doing it to me, but I still appreciate it because it's effort that he's putting in to make sure that I'm succeeding at work. And this other thing that he did too, so going back to that, there's like 1,000 things that fire service leaders right now are having to navigate is he calls them, so like every day we have fires we have to put out. There's stuff that we have to deal with every day that come up. You know, you can't put them on the back burner. But there are projects that we all have going on that are long-term projects. So instead of for many years, several years, we were all like grinding away at really, really big projects, but we were siloed and we were trying to move forward these big, big monumental changes. But there was like 6 of us all doing that with our own thing. And the department was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, and we were all kind of spinning our wheels and like making very slow progress. So a few years ago, he gave us Venn diagrams. And at first I was like, really? A Venn diagram? But it worked and my brain loves it. So if you're a chief level person or anybody and you're responsible for a group of people that you need to kind of rein in, do a Venn diagram. So all of us that worked for him got together and we have these circles. So if you know what a Venn diagram is, it's these circles that kind of overlap. So we had to pick for the year 3 projects so that we weren't working on 50 different things and not getting one accomplished. And so we would pick 3 big things, and that's what we were supposed to prioritize during our work day or during our week or whatever to work on those. And then in the overlap, we had to each pick a project that we could work with someone else on so that we weren't siloed and trying to get this stuff done independently. And man, our the work we were getting done was better. It was getting done quicker because we were actually accomplishing 1 or 2 things versus trying to accomplish 20. And so that's a simple thing. And it sounds cheesy. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to be put in a Venn diagram. My brain loved it because when I came into work in the morning, I didn't have to think like, all right, I have 50 things that my office needs to get done. These are my priorities. And then the little spot fires that pop up, I still navigate those, but I go back to what my priorities are on my Venn diagram. It's good stuff.
That that is good stuff. That's progress right there.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me, and it's for the young people out there. Again, there's an opportunity, I think, and it could be a challenging hurdle to try and overcome some of the cultural ways of this industry, but it needs to progress and it needs to move forward, and we need to catch up to kind of in a way what the corporate world is doing as far as, when we look at hiring and retaining and things like that. And I know that takes a village board to approve salary and benefits. It's interesting. Everything ebb and flows, right? Like there was a time like 2008, 2009, like get a firefighter job. It's, in Illinois, it's a union job, great pay, great benefits. Everybody else is getting laid off, right? And then like it is now shifting. And I think we're seeing that shift, where that you can go get there's so many opportunities outside of a lot of these, historically blue collar jobs, if you would, for lack of better terms, that people are taking advantage of those opportunities with great pay and benefits, hybrid options, remote options, like all this stuff. Now, obviously we can't be hybrid or remote firefighters, right? Like that's not an option. But so it's looking at that aspect as well. And, that's what we're competing with. So there's just a lot of these big issues that I think a lot of times we just don't want to address because it's hard, and it's hard to have these conversations, and it's hard to swallow your own pride and your own ego and realization of what you thought the fire service was or is, because it's not. And we got to move away from that. And, there's a lot of challenges here. And are you up for the challenge or not? Is what it comes down to.
And something, as I know we should probably wrap this up soon, but a big challenge for me right now is technology, because I feel like I've hit this wall of being able to utilize technology the way, it's leaps and bounds ahead, and every day it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so people have to be able to capitalize on what technology can do for your fire service. And I think we should get Kevin Sofin on here for an episode, interview him. And he's from Darley. If you guys don't know Kevin, he does all kinds of like technology, smart firefighting stuff. It's just really, really way over my head and super impressive. But we should get him on here just to talk about some of the ways you can use technology in your fire service and what's out there. But that's one area for me that's it's hard for me, and I have got to keep working on it so that I can stay current.
Yeah. And it's also an opportunity for young people who are technologically savvy to, hey, come show me, and create those work groups and promote that level of, administrative thinking in the realms of technology. So there's a lot of opportunities out there right now, for growth and progress in our industry, but there's also a lot of challenges, and it's those organizations that can get past those challenges. And like I said, their own mindset of what we thought this industry was and progress out of that. So, we're an industry full of challenges and opportunity right now, and it's who's up for it, is really what it comes down to.
Yep, absolutely. Well, this has been another great one. I love this topic. So, all right, you guys, thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Just hit us up on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, right? We have Instagram, right?
We do.
Okay, that's what I thought. And email too. You guys can email us. So take care. Have a good week.
We'll see you next time. As we wrap up another episode, this has been Kyle
and Kerry
from the Heat of Command podcast.
Thank you, as always, for listening. Please make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And as always, we love the feedback. Keep it coming.
See you next time.